Let's check out GENOME. Welcome back to the mix. I'm ABD. Today, we have a rundown of the GENOME Amp Simulator plugin software standalone application from Two Notes Audio Engineering. The big 1.6 update has just released, and today we could check it out for you. This is what you're greeted with when you open up GENOME for the first time. The very first preset, which is called Cali Cleans. It's a Fender type of amp, and we can do a little bit of a run through of the interface. Starting in the top left, you have your 3 lines for options. If you click that, at the very top you can update the software. Below that, you can change the window size from 50 to 200. You can log out of your account. You can go into your audio preferences, MIDI mapping. You can also contact support right from here. We close that. To the left of that, you have your mono or stereo routing. You can do mono, left-right mix. You can do mono just on the left, mono just on the right. And then you have your input here, which is at 0. You can see your input monitor up above it. To the right of that, you have a tuner. If you click on the tuner, here's how it looks. I believe it is a cent-based tuner. At the bottom here, you have 440 hertz. Click that to close it. To the right of that, you have your gate, which you could turn on and adjust your threshold right from here. And then if we go all the way to the right, we have our output slider here, our output monitor here. This is our oversampling at the top, high, high plus, ultra, and max. And then all the way on the top right, you have a cart because you can purchase additional add-ons to GENOME. You have your presets A through H, and A through C are filled out by GENOME. D and on you can fill out by yourself. You can search, you can favorite, and you can import and export. Up here is also where you save and undo and all of that good stuff. To the right, up here you have your MIDI and automation, not assigned. MIDI, not using. To the right of that, you have your tap BPM, and then below all of that, you have your signal chain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 part signal chain. Right now, we have 1 amp, 1 cab, a studio compressor, and a studio reverb on the Gemini amp, and here is what you get. Clean. So that is a very clean and very usable Fender type tone. If we move on to a different amp, what you do up here, you can turn on or turn off the individual parts of the signal chain. We can also get rid of it. Once we do that, we get a look at the dynamic IR cab, which this is where we change our cabinets. Right now we're using a Vibro Fender type amp. Here is where you can change it, for example, to a British OS 212 Red. So included in GENOME is 14 amps, 15 cabinets, 17 pedals, 17 studio effects, and then more than 50 AI amp profiles. And we can run through those different amps for you now. Before we go to the Codex and check out the AI amplifiers, let's go through the actual amplifiers included. First we have the Albion, which is like we said before, a Marshall type amp. The Aviator, which I'm actually not quite sure what type of amp this is supposed to be. A bass breaker, maybe? Somebody in the comments let me know what that's supposed to be. Next up we have the Eldorado, and I can tell you what that is. That is a Soldano type amp. You can tell by the colors, the knobs, of course, Soldano. The Flatback, which is obviously a rectifier type head. And then we have the Flatback 5, which is obviously a Mark 5 type Mesa Boogie amp. And then we have the Foundry Bass. I'm not quite sure if that is a bass breaker or what. I think it is in fact a bass breaker. Another Foundry, so I'd imagine another type of Fender tweed kind of thing. If you know what that is, let me know in the comments down below. And then up next we have the Foxy, which I believe is a matchless type amp. Very retro, very groovy, baby. Next up we have the Gemini, the #1 Fender black panel type amp. Followed by the Nifty 50, which is obviously a PV 5150 type deal. We have another bass amp, which is called the Peggy, which is obviously supposed to be an MPEG bass amp. And then we have the Tangerine, if you will, which is obviously an orange type amp, not in color, but the orange brand. And then next up is the TSM Power Amp, which is a tube model type thing where you can change the tube from a 6L6 to an EL34 to an EL84 to a KT88. You can change the depth, the contour, the volume. You can change it from triode to pentode type simulation, and it is single-ended or push-pull options. And then these last two are new, and they include AI technology. This first one here is a PVH, which is obviously a 5150 using TSM AI technology. This is one of the best sounding amps, I think, included in this package. We will hear it in just a second. And then finally the Calibro 73, which is a bass breaker, which does also include a bass, normal, and bridge channel selection, which you can actually bridge those inputs there with that virtual cable. Pretty cool stuff. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the included pedals in GENOME. For that, we do the same thing. At the very top, we have delay. We have a dupe delay, a studio delay, and a ping pong delay. Ooh, little ping pong rackets right there, that's cute. And then as far as drive, we have the Big Fuzz, the D250, the Green Meanie, the Clonotar, the Raunch Maker, looks like a blues breaker to me, the Ultra Drive, which looks pretty boss to me, the Vermin, ratty little bastard, and then the Saber, very Star Wars. And that's it as far as drive. Next up is dynamics. So we have a studio compressor, a volume pedal, and a noise gate. It's a pretty cool looking noise gate. And that's everything for dynamics. Next up is EQ. You have a bass cue, a guitar cue, 7-band, and then a studio EQ, very fancy looking plug-in type EQ. That's everything for EQ. Next up we have a studio enhancer, and then a studio exciter, which is a little more simple. It has a low and a high band. Next up is filter, and we have a wah baby, obviously a wah-wah type pedal. And then we have some modulation, studio chorus, flanger, tremolo, vibrato, a phaser type thing, shout out EVH, and an analog bass chorus. That's everything for modulation. For reverb, we have a studio reverb, and that is it. The other two reverbs that are available are for purchase, the Tetraverb and the Spring 63, which you can demo in the amp. You can try it before you buy it. That's what I have in the cart right now. And then we also have a Studio Twin tracker, and then the Wall of Sound Post FX effect, which is an EQ, exciter, compressor, and reverb. To look back at the cabinets that are included, they have the Brit Vintage C, a Marshall, another type of Marshall, and then they have the Princetown, which is obviously like a Fender Princeton, and then the Cali Deluxe, which is like a Fender Hot Rod, the Nashville, which is like a tweed type Fender, I would imagine, the Peggy Rocket, which is that MPEG cabinet for bass, the Vibro V30 Fender type, the AE Brit OS Marshall type, another Cali type, I don't know if that's Mesa or what exactly, it's a bass amp, the Eldorado, the amp for the Soldano type, then a Vox type, a Mesa type, another Mesa type, and then we're back to the beginning. The final thing as far as the signal chain that we could take a look at is Codex, which includes more than 50 AI amp simulations. At the top here, you can go through all of them, and they include a number of amps that are not included in the other amps that we just went through. Here you can change your tone stack, and you can experiment with that in pre and post. You have your input, which can be neutral, or warm, or bright. You have your bass, middle, treble, output with your volume. Down here you have an EQ, which can be changed from guitar to bass to custom. And then you have your enhancer, which has dry, wet, body, thickness, brilliance to make the guitar just sound better. But how do some of these other amps sound? Let's keep this Marshall cabinet. First up, we have the Albion Marshall type amp. In comparison, here's what their Green Meanie sounds like. Let's turn theirs off. Real one back on. Now the simulated one again. So I think what it's doing is when I turn on the actual tube screamer, it's not accounting for the actual boost as much, where the simulated one is definitely boosting it more like it would if it was going into a real amp. If we change the cabinet from Marshall to Fender, that will also make a big difference in the tone. Right, much more boxy, definitely a different type of tone, but that's the joy of the GENOME software is you have all of these amps, all of these tools right at your fingertips, a huge signal chain. So the options for you to customize and change and get the exact tone that you might need are endless. And honestly, I cannot believe that they included all of this for only $80. There's the Ultimate Edition that's $280 that includes a couple pedals and a couple amps that aren't included, but comparatively for $80, you get a whole lot of usable amps and cabinets and usable tones. The effects sound great. All of it sounds really, really good. And let's try that flatback, which is that Mesa Boogie rectifier type thing. Let's go ahead and change the cabinet to something more suitable, like a big old Mesa Boogie cabinet. Let's go ahead and try that Mesa Boogie Mark V. So again, remember we have the tube screamer engaged. So again, very usable, great sounding tones. Let's go ahead and change from that flatback to that foundry guitar, which is, again, I'm not really sure what this is. Is that a Dumble type thing? It's another California type thing, but I'm not sure. What do you think, Dumble? Sounds like a Dumble, I think. Next up, we have that Foxy amp. Let's go ahead and change to a more suitable cabinet. In this case, the Vox type. Let's go ahead and turn that green meanie off. Super clean. Next up, the Gemini, which is that Fender type black panel. Go ahead and turn that green meanie back on. So that saturation, that tube, simulated saturation sounds great, and that edge of breakup type stuff, the breakup, is not fuzzy and gross like it is sometimes in these amp simulator plugins. It sounds very realistic. Next up, we have that nifty 50 PV 5150. Everyone's favorite amp that was made by someone who's now made by a different someone, but still made by that original someone, the 5150. We have another version of the 5150 coming up in a moment, but the PV one here sounds spectacular. That high gain stuff everyone loves. Let's change the cabinet though, why don't we? I really like these Marshall cabinets, I think they sound great. Nifty 50. And next up is that Peggy MPEG amp, which is for bass. But it does not sound terrible with guitar. Let's turn off the green meaning. That is a bass amp, but again, doesn't sound bad, even with that green meaning. And next up, we have the Tanger, that orange type amp. Turn up that gain, turn up that volume. Let's go ahead and turn that green meaning off. Next up, Goodbye Tangerine. We have just a couple more. We have that TSM Power Amp on EL34 on 6L6. And that's a pretty good actual comparison between those two different types of tubes. The 6L6 is a lot more smooth, better for high gain stuff and cleans. That EL34 is a little more round and better for high gain. Then you have the EL84, which are tiny little guys. And then finally the KT88, which are big old boys. Cool. Again, more options, the better. And we have two more. And these last two are the two that were added the most recently that include TSM AI technology. We have a 5150 and then a bass breaker type amp. PVH50, which is very much like an EVH 5150. We already demoed a 5150 earlier, but this one here, right now we're on the clean channel, which is a channel that it's not really known for, but it does sound good. Super duper clean. But if we go over here and change the channel, that's what we really want from the 5150. Very, very cool stuff. The last and final amp that we will go over for you today is the Calibro 73.